You have been told all your life to chase light, to be positive, to suppress anger, envy, lust, or fear, as if they were stains on your character. But what if those very shadows are not stains, but seeds? What if the very impulses you hide from the world, the ones you even hide from yourself, contain the raw energy of your life's true purpose? Ask yourself, why do you fear your darkness so much? What part of you are you terrified others might see if the mask slips? And what has it cost you to keep repressing the very energy that could become your strength? Because Jung's warning is clear, the parts of yourself you bury do not disappear. They rule you from below, shaping your choices, your desires, your relationships, until you are no longer living your own life, but a life dictated by denial. The tension is sharp. Will you keep imagining light, pretending your dark side doesn't exist and remain fragmented? Or will you face it, name it, and finally reclaim the energy you have been wasting in repression? Because until you do, your purpose will remain hidden. And once you do, you may find that the very thing you feared most is the very thing you were meant to become. So the question remains, is your darkness your enemy, or is it the map to your destiny? When Jung spoke of the shadow, he was not speaking in abstractions. He was naming the concrete truth you live with every day. The parts of yourself you deny, repress, or disown do not disappear. They slip underground, and from there, they quietly direct your choices, your reactions, even your sense of identity. You may think you are in control, but ask yourself honestly, how many of your patterns, your relationships, your failures, even your successes are really fueled by the energy you've buried? The context of your life may make repression feel safer. Society rewards you for showing only your brightest face. From childhood, you were praised for being good, kind, strong, obedient. But where did your anger go? Where did your jealousy, your ambition, your raw hunger, your desire for power or recognition go? You buried them believing you were building virtue. Yet Jung warns, every quality you exile from your conscious life becomes part of the shadow, and the shadow does not rest. It waits, it shapes, it demands. Think of the times you've been triggered by someone else. Why did their arrogance enrage you? Why did their freedom unsettle you? Why did their ambition make you uneasy? Could it be that they embodied something you repressed in yourself? And if so, what does that say about your life's direction? Your dark side is not simply destructive. Left unexamined, yes, it poisons. But faced with honesty, it transforms. Anger becomes courage. Envy becomes aspiration. Fear becomes humility and clarity. Lust becomes vitality. What you repress becomes your prison, but what you integrate becomes your compass. And that compass may be pointing directly at your life's purpose, if only you are brave enough to look. The tragedy for many is not that they never had a calling, but that they never dared to face the very energies that would have revealed it. So the question for you is immediate. What gifts are you still hiding inside your shadow? What parts of yourself have you called unworthy that may in fact be the very fuel for your destiny? And most of all, will you keep running from them, or will you turn around and face them before your life passes by unlived? You were taught that light makes you virtuous and that darkness makes you dangerous. So you hid your hunger, your rage, your ambition, your envy, your defiance. You wore the mask of patience, humility, kindness, control. You thought it made you safe, lovable, acceptable. But what did it cost you? How much of your own fire did you extinguish in order to keep appearing good? And isn't that the cruelest irony, that in denying your darkness, you also denied your purpose? The shadow always finds a way out, especially when you keep pretending it is not there. Think about the times you've exploded after suppressing anger for weeks or sabotaged opportunities because you were too afraid to admit your own desire, or resented people who had the courage to embody the very traits you buried. Was that virtue, or was it avoidance wearing the costume of self-control? When Jung warned that the shadow is 90% pure gold, he meant this: what you reject in yourself often contains the exact energy you need for growth. The ambition you repress could become vision. The rage you fear could become resolve. The envy you hide could become inspiration. But until you take off the mask, those energies fester. And while they fester, your life becomes smaller than it was meant to be. How much longer will you keep playing small while pretending it is humility? How much longer will you keep mistaking denial for discipline? How much longer will you call fear virtue simply because it looks good to others? If you live like that, the years will pass and you will wonder why your life feels hollow when all along it was your own mask that hollowed it out. And yet there is a deeper danger. When you live only from your mask, you attract others who do the same. You may find yourself surrounded by people who applaud your performance but never meet your truth. You may even find yourself resenting them, not because they fooled you, but because you fooled yourself first. Isn't that the weight you feel in the pit of your stomach? The sense that no matter how good you are, something essential remains missing. The mask is heavy. It was always meant to crack. And when it does, you are left with two choices. Either reinforce it, doubling down on the performance, or finally admit what you've been hiding. Which will you choose? To keep pretending, or to face the shadow and let it guide you? The hardest truth is this: your darkness does not block your life's purpose. Your refusal to face it does. Every time you call your emptiness contentment, every time you disguise your fear as virtue, you prolong the distance between who you are and who you were meant to become. But the moment you face it, the gap closes. The energy you wasted repressing yourself is returned, and what once felt like weakness begins to reveal itself as your greatest strength. So ask yourself, what part of your shadow are you still afraid to admit? What mask are you still wearing to convince others and yourself that you are safe? And how long will you let that mask keep you from living the truth you were born for? Because in the end, it is not the shadow that ruins you, it is the mask. And the day you take it off is the day your real life, your purposeful life, finally begins. Carl Jung warned that the greatest danger in a person's life is not the shadow itself, but the refusal to face it. He understood that what you repress in yourself does not vanish, it governs you from the dark. And that governance is subtle. It bends your choices, warps your relationships, and keeps your destiny locked away behind fear and denial. The shadow in Jung's model is not simply your flaws. It is your unlived life, all the energy, desire, and creativity you have exiled in order to appear good, strong, or acceptable. You may think your purpose will be found in following only your strengths, but Jung's psychology suggests otherwise. The very gifts that could define your destiny are often buried in the shadow. The aggression you fear could fuel the courage you need to lead. The selfishness you reject could contain the self-respect required to draw boundaries. The ambition you suppress could carry the vision your life is waiting for. So the critical question becomes, will you keep repressing what you fear, or will you dare to reframe it as the key to your purpose? Jung placed individuation, the process of becoming whole, at the center of human life. Individuation requires you to integrate, not deny your shadow. Without integration, you remain fragmented, chasing illusions of virtue that collapse under pressure. With integration, you stop projecting your shadow onto others and begin to recognize it as part of yourself. And what you once fought as an enemy becomes an ally. Isn't that the paradox you've been avoiding? That the very thing you are running from may be the only thing that can make you whole. Projection is where much of the shadow hides. Consider how often you condemn in others what you secretly repress in yourself. When you despise arrogance, is it because arrogance is truly unbearable, or because it touches the ambition you fear admitting? When you scorn selfishness, is it because others take too much, or because you are terrified of ever putting yourself first? Each time you react with disproportionate intensity, your shadow is likely speaking. What would happen if you listened instead of denying it? The theoretical root of Jung's teaching is that psyche and purpose are not found by avoiding darkness, but by reconciling with it. He argued that the soul is not aiming for purity or perfection, but for wholeness. Wholeness demands you face contradictions, light and dark, love and rage, tenderness and aggression. To deny one side is to cripple the other. To integrate both is to step into the fullness of who you are. Could it be that your life's purpose has felt so elusive because you've been trying to reach it while disowning half of yourself? Jung also insisted that archetypes, universal patterns of the psyche, live within you. The hero, the mother, the trickster, the king, the lover. Each has a light side and a shadow. If you only embrace the socially approved half, you end up flat, hollow, predictable. But when you integrate the rejected side, you gain depth and authenticity. For example, to live your purpose as a leader requires not only vision, but also the capacity for anger, discipline, and confrontation. Without the shadow's energy, your leadership collapses into passivity or people-pleasing. How many of your struggles come from refusing the darker fuel your archetype requires to come alive? And then there is Jung's boldest insight. The shadow does not just contain your repressed traits, it contains meaning. He described the shadow as 90% pure gold, because the unlived life is not waste, but treasure. But treasure is buried deep, and you must dig where you fear most. That is why your purpose feels so frightening, because it asks you to go precisely where you don't want to go. So the question stands, are you willing to descend into your darkness to find the gold, or will you stay on the surface pretending safety is enough? The shadow is the doorway to transformation, not because darkness is better than light, but because both are required. To live in only one is to remain half alive. When you finally turn toward what you fear, the energy you once wasted repressing yourself becomes available for creation, love, and truth. And in that release, your purpose begins to emerge, not as a fantasy, but as a lived reality. So, ask yourself now, what part of your shadow have you most feared to face? What projection keeps haunting your relationships? What buried energy could become your greatest gift if you dared to claim it? And most importantly, will you continue living fragmented, or will you dare to walk the path of individuation, where your darkness ceases to be a curse and begins to be the very map to your destiny? The roots of your darkness are not accidents. They are the underground system of your soul, hidden, tangled, and alive. Jung taught that what you repress becomes fate. What you refuse to face becomes the very thing that shapes you in secret. And until you descend into those roots, you cannot understand your life's direction, let alone fulfill its purpose. So ask yourself, where do your roots lie? They lie first in the wounds you carry from early life, the shames you buried, the rejections you silenced, the anger you swallowed because you were told it was too much. Each unspoken moment became a root, and over years, those roots hardened into patterns. You think you just happen to attract the same kind of relationships or to self-sabotage at the edge of success. But is it really coincidence? Or are those hidden roots feeding the same story again and again? Another root is projection. What you cannot accept in yourself, you will endlessly see in others. Do you find yourself enraged at arrogance, yet secretly crave the confidence to stand tall? Do you despise selfishness while failing to care for your own needs? Do you chase beauty outside of yourself while refusing to acknowledge your own radiance? Each projection is not random. It is a mirror pointing to the energy you exiled. Will you keep fighting the reflection, or will you follow it back to its root? Your shadow's roots also live in your contradictions. Outwardly, you may act composed, kind, patient. Inwardly, you may boil with resentment, fear, or pride. The split between who you show and who you are is not harmless. It drains you. It feeds anxiety, depression, fatigue, because you are living two lives instead of one. Isn't that why you sometimes feel hollow, even when everything looks fine on the outside? The hollowness is the voice of your roots calling you to integration. Dreams are another gateway. They reveal what you refuse to face in daylight. The recurring figure chasing you, the house with locked rooms, the animal you fear, all are symbols of roots in your unconscious. They are the shadow's messengers. You may call them nightmares, but what if they are invitations? What if every dream is a map showing you where the energy lies hidden, waiting to be reclaimed? Do you dismiss them, or do you dare to ask what they are saying? And then there are synchronicities, those moments when the outer world echoes your inner state with uncanny precision. The song that plays, the exact words you needed to hear. The stranger who speaks the phrase you were just thinking. The sudden encounter that stirs the very longing you denied. Are these random, or are they the universe drawing your attention back to your own roots? Jung believed they are not chance but communication. Will you keep dismissing them as coincidence, or will you take them as the whispers of your deeper self? At the core, the deepest root is fear of death. Not merely physical death, but ego death, the collapse of the false self you worked so hard to build. Isn't this why you cling to control? Why you cling to being seen as good, strong, successful? Because to let go feels like dying. And yet Jung warned, individuation always feels like death, because something must end before something truer can begin. Will you keep running from this death and remain half alive? Or will you let the false self die so that your true life can finally live? But notice this, roots are not only prisons, they are also nourishment. Your anger once owned can become your courage to lead. Your grief once faced can become the well of your compassion. Your desire once claimed can become the fire of your vitality. Every trait you buried in shame has the potential to become your greatest strength. Isn't it strange that what you feared most is often the very thing others admire when you finally reveal it? The mechanism is precise. What is repressed returns. It leaks through your body in illness, through your relationships in conflict, through your choices in repetition. Until you face the root, you will keep trimming branches, exhausted by symptoms that never end. But once you dig, once you face the shadow directly, the energy bound in repression is released. And that energy is not neutral, it is the raw material of your purpose. So how do you face it? First, by asking, where in my life am I repeating the same story? What wounds do I keep circling? What traits in others trigger me most strongly? What do my dreams keep showing me? Where do coincidences keep pointing me? Each question uncovers a root, and each root, if faced, can become a channel of transformation. The choice remains. Will you keep ignoring the roots, pretending the branches are enough? Or will you descend into the soil of your own soul where the truth waits? Jung's message is clear. Your dark side does not merely hide your purpose, it is your purpose. The roots of your shadow are the very roots of your destiny. The only question is whether you will dare to dig. If the roots of your shadow are the roots of your purpose, then practice is the way you learn to dig. Without practice, the insight stays abstract, and the shadow keeps ruling from below. With practice, you begin to reclaim your energy piece by piece, until what once enslaved you becomes the very source of your strength. The question is not whether you have a shadow, you do. The question is whether you will work with it daily until it reveals the life you were meant to live. The first practice is naming. You cannot transform what you will not name. What do you fear most in yourself? What quality in others makes you seethe, recoil, or burn with envy? These reactions are not random. They are spotlights pointing to your shadow. Write them down without excuse, without varnish. If you call it pride, lust, weakness, or rage, name it plainly. Do you dare to look at the words without flinching? Until you name it, the shadow wears you. Once you name it, you begin to wear it consciously, as part of your wholeness. The second practice is owning your projection. Every time you say, "they are selfish," ask, "where am I selfish?" Every time you rage, "they are arrogant," ask, "where in me is the hunger to stand tall?" Projection is the shadow's favorite disguise because it lets you fight yourself at a safe distance. But what if every conflict is secretly a mirror? What if every person who irritates you is carrying a trait you've disowned? The courage to reclaim projection is the courage to stop wasting your energy fighting ghosts and start reclaiming it for your own purpose. The third practice is ritualizing energy. Your shadow does not disappear, it transforms. Anger can corrode you, or it can fuel your voice for truth. Desire can chain you, or it can animate your creativity. Grief can sink you, or it can soften you into compassion, but this does not happen by accident. You must create containers where the energy can flow without destroying you. Do you paint when the rage rises? Do you write when the grief floods? Do you run, sing, pray, breathe, not to repress, but to give form to the fire? Without ritual, the shadow burns wild. With ritual, it becomes a forge. The fourth practice is shadow dialogue. Jung taught that your unconscious speaks through images, dreams, and symbols. Instead of dismissing them, you can speak back. When a figure appears in your dream, the pursuer, the seducer, the monster, sit quietly and ask, "What do you want from me? Why are you here?" And when anger boils in your body, instead of suppressing it, ask, "What are you protecting? What wound are you hiding?" This dialogue is not madness, it is integration. Have you ever wondered why your shadow keeps showing up in the same forms? Because it is waiting for you to listen. The fifth practice is integration through action. Shadow work is not complete in thought alone. If your shadow hides your assertiveness, you must practice saying no. If your shadow hides your tenderness, you must practice saying yes. If your shadow hides your creativity, you must practice making. If your shadow hides your voice, you must practice speaking. Each time you act on what you reclaimed, the old patterns weaken. Each time you step into the very energy you once feared, the shadow loses its grip, and your purpose takes shape in reality, not fantasy. Now, consider this. What would your life look like if you named your shadow every day? If you reclaimed projection every week? If you gave ritual to your energy every time it boiled? If you spoke to the images in your dreams instead of dismissing them? If you acted on your reclaimed power instead of leaving it buried? Would you not begin to live differently? Would you not begin to live purposefully rather than reactively? And yet, these practices are not easy. They demand honesty that cuts through illusion. They demand courage that stands without applause. They demand discipline that persists even when no one is watching. Are you willing to live that way? Or will you keep rehearsing virtue-polishing masks and postponing the day when you finally meet yourself? But imagine the alternative. You practice, and little by little, the shadow reveals its gifts. You discover that your anger carries your voice, that your envy carries your unlived potential, that your fear carries your path forward. You discover that what you hated most in yourself becomes the very thing that equips you to serve, to love, to create. Isn't this what you were searching for all along? A life that is not borrowed, not rehearsed, not fragmented, but whole. Remember, your shadow is not a mistake, it is your map. The only question is whether you will keep running from it, or whether you will practice until its dark contours reveal the shape of your destiny. Will you continue as you are, surviving half alive, ruled by what you refuse to see? Or will you take up these practices one by one and begin the journey Jung promised, the journey into yourself, where your dark side ceases to be a curse and begins to be your crown? So the choice stands before you now with stark clarity. Will you keep living as a stranger to yourself, afraid of the very parts that could make you whole? Or will you dare to descend into your shadow, to meet what you fear, and to rise with the power that only truth can give? Because in the end, the tragedy is not that you have a dark side. The tragedy is when you refuse to claim it, and so live without ever stepping into the life that was meant for you. Ask yourself plainly, how much longer will you waste energy hiding from your own depths? How much longer will you hand your purpose over to fear, repression, or denial? And what would it cost you to finally stop, to sit with yourself, to look into the mirror of your shadow and to say, "You are mine, and I will not run from you anymore"? For this is not philosophy alone, this is practice. This is the decision to stop postponing your life and to begin living it whole. Will you take up the daily work of naming, owning, ritualizing, dialoguing, and acting not as punishment but as liberation? Will you train yourself step by step until your shadow no longer rules you from the dark but walks with you as your ally? Jung's promise was simple. Your shadow hides your purpose. Your purpose hides in your shadow. The two are one. The question is whether you will keep fleeing or whether you will turn toward it and finally walk the path that was yours all along. The call is here. The map is within you. The only question that remains is the one only you can answer. Will you follow it?